Welcome to short highlights of the 59th edition of Eschborn-Frankfurt with me, Jez Cox. Do not forget, you can go back and catch the race in its entirety on GCN+. This race, in its 61st year, but the 59th edition, takes on a very familiar course, heading northwestward from Frankfurt, starting out in the city of Eschborn, a birthplace of Tony Martin no less, to head northwestward up into the Taunus Hills. From very early on today, a breakaway of 5 riders went clear, and the man of the match, no doubt about it, was Jens Reinders, because he was to go in 2 breakaways today. There he was in the yellow and blue of Sport Vlaanderen Baloise. Behind that leading group of 5, most of the pace setting being done by the German team of Bora Hansgrohe and Sam Bennett, the Irishman. This was the breakaway as they headed into the midsection of our course. They at one point had in excess of 5 minutes of lead, but that was then pegged down to about 2.5 minutes. And the team of Entomarché, Wanty Gobert, and the 4-time winner Alexander Kristoff doing an awful lot. This was Georg Zimmermann desperately trying to detach a group from the front end and mix things up a little bit to put pressure on the other sprinters' teams. The race is a fascinating mix of big wide open forest roads and then this fascinating finale we have in the centre of Frankfurt for the criterium style finish, I should say. This was Pierre Rolland in the breakaway all day, the remaining survivor of that first break. He was then joined by some more who kicked things off and joined Pierre Rolland for a rolling second breakaway, which again then became 5 riders. Rolland being allowed a little bit of time to relax on the back of it because he was back in there once again with Jens Reinders of Sport Vlaanderen Baloise. They were joined not too long after by Jonas Rutsch, the German rider for EF Education, Easy Post, and he was one of the strongest riders in there as they closed into the last 50 kilometres, but the peloton was closing all the time. And Jens Reinders, once again, wound his way back on after the final climb of the Mamelschein and was left out front by himself. What an impressive ride by this young Belgian today. He was the last man to be caught, having been in both breakaways today, including being dropped and winding his way back on. And this was the final ascent of the Mamelschein out in the Taunus Hills before a regrouping of the whole peloton and then that tactical game of setting up their sprinter for this big finale today. This is one of the most important one-day races for the sprinters on the men's World Tour. And Alpecin Fenix were doing everything they could to try and set things up for Jasper Philipsen, last year's winner. There was the bell being rung with 1 7-kilometre lap to go. Jasper Philipsen, last year's winner. Could Alpecin Fenix set things up for him? Bahrain Victorious doing everything they could for Phil Bauhaus, the big German sprinter. And Israel Premier Tech seeing if they could get Giacomo Nizzolo into the right position. Alex Dowsett doing a lot in the closing stages to try and string things out on the city centre circuit. Biniam Girmay moved up very quickly, making his return, the Eritrean, after going back home after his big win in Ghent-Wevelgem. And this was the final lead into the final drive. Fred Wright, the South Londoner, opening up hard. Biniam Girmay coming over the top of him, the Eritrean, and driving hard. But in his wheel was Alexander Kristoff, looking for his 5th win in this event. And then Danny Van Poppel, the final lead out for that man, Sam Bennett, the Irishman, in the end going clear of Fernando Gaviria and getting the win that puts him back at the top of the sprinters table. The Irishman, believe me, is formally back. It's been a very testing last year or so for Sam Bennett, and the Irishman was delighted at the finish. What a lead out by Danny Van Poppel as well. Look at the speed of that. Van Poppel having the opportunity to sit up and celebrate as Alexander Kristoff cruised past him. Both the Bora riders celebrating, and Sam Bennett delighted. Gaviria sprinting well just behind him, and Alexander Kristoff also looking mighty sprightly on the line. There was the top 10, Bennett from Gaviria and Kristoff. Phil Bauhaus holding his position well in 4th, just ahead of lead-out man Danny Van Poppel. What a comeback for Sam Bennett, who looks very much right back to his best in this, one of the 2 big German races. Final shots to close with, looking down on the Opel Zoo in Königstein. Thank you for watching the highlights. Do catch the whole thing back on GCN+.